This morning we're lucky to be joined by two folks who not only are an important part of El Paso, but have been very successful in their approach to business. And so we've got Monica Velasco from FastSigns and Edgar Lopez from Situ architecture that are going to be joining us this morning. Um, just a quick word. You got the bios for both, but I'm really excited about the particulars for this morning's panel, partly because I think as you hear Monica's story and what FastSigns has done to pivot with some of the changes in COVID, I think it's really remarkable. I think there's some great insight into the idea of how businesses can make adjustments and things that you all have probably done or have been thinking about doing, but she'll talk a little bit about how FastSigns has adjusted to COVID. And then Edgar, I cannot say enough about Edgar. He's one of my favorite people in El Paso. He is incredibly talented. And if you have been downtown to see either of the new hotels, Edgar's fingerprints are all over, I think, some of the most significant creative design in downtown El Paso for the last several years. And it's just, he and I had a conversation one day when we met the very first time about what they were doing inside the Plaza Hotel, and he grabbed my notebook, he turned it around, and he just started sketching furiously. I still have the sketch maker, and he laid out what the floor plan of the hotel looked like and how they could change it. And for somebody that like me that doesn't understand a lot of architecture, one of the things that's remarkable about Edgar is that he makes that very accessible in addition to his talents. So we're really happy to have both of you here this morning. Let me start with this question, Monica, for you, and then the same question for you, Edgar, in just a few minutes. How are you doing, Monica?
We're going crazy here. It's just been nonstop. To be very honest, quite overwhelming. Just, since it started in March, we've never closed. We've never reduced hours. We have never even had to think about laying off or furlough anybody. I'm not going to say that it didn't cross my mind, but with everything that we were able to pivot with as far as PPE and signage and just all of the requests that we were getting, we just didn't really foresee that there was a way to stop. We just really wanted to help the community amidst all the lockdowns. From day one, I had all the PPE necessary, N95s, gloves, everything to keep my staff, safe. So I would say we've been pretty lucky to still be going, without any issues.
And how have you, because I think one of the things that I wanted to really touch on with both of you is, and you said this, I think, a little bit, but you've got a pretty reasonable sized team of people at FastSigns. How do you know how they are doing? Like, how have you been able to sense check your employees, and have you had to alter over the course of the last several months the way that you are checking in on them, or just kind of gauging their sense of how they're doing?
So to be very honest, I have a little black book that I write notes. We were having weekly meetings. We used to have daily meetings, but that was just not possible. So we went to weekly meetings, and on February 28th, I talked to all of my staff about the coronavirus. At that time, we weren't really calling it COVID that much, COVID-19. So some of them kind of had the eye rolls and were like, what's she talking about? And I've always been a little bit more advanced with things like proactive rather than reactive. And so I gave them, information as far as, what we might be up against. And as things got, a little bit more serious, I told them, we have to institute, the hand washing, the social distancing. We bought a thermometer, an infrared thermometer, so we were able to check people daily. We put social distancing decals in our facility. We locked the doors. We did not let really that many people into our facility. We figured we could do it by email, text, or, by phone. So we just wanted to kind of limit that. And I think that helped because that kept them at ease. But to be honest, there were some that were just absolutely terrified to come to work. And that's been one of the hardest things to deal with as a business owner.
Edgar, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, I just want to say, I guess nearly every industry has been affected by the pandemic, and the architectural field is not the exception. 2/3 of firms has been slowed down, or some they've been cutting their employees on half. Some of them they've been cutting their salaries at 20%. It's not our case, thankfully, yet. But small firms or small, not only architectural firms, the small business are the ones who've been beating the hardest in this pandemic. Even if we apply for emergency loans or to the payment protection plan, we think this is going to be only a short-term solution. We don't know how it's going to affect in our industry. Even though the construction field is considered essential activity, that is only on paper. The reality, some of the contractors that face impact because of the COVID, especially living in the border. And living on the border because many of our workers come from Mexico. Now they cannot cross. Our firm is taking some measurements to how to live with this new way. We started working virtually from home since March, and we end up coming back to the office in May. Although it's hard in our field because it's a collaboration between teams. So the communication is a key component, and especially with clients. Although especially for small firms, that we are not prepared to work like this. Bigger firms or nationwide firms usually do that most of the time. One thing that we're doing is now we put in a cloud-based server, so every employee who works from home, they can have access directly. Also, we're trying to convert into laptops. Now most of our meetings are through Zoom. But the hardest thing is communication, and also seeing how the client is reacting and how putting many projects on hold or deferred, especially those clients, not only government, but also private clients, that they didn't have their funds secured before the pandemic. So, and that affect not only us, because that's only the beginning, but from us depends so many other fields, like all the engineers that help us to put a project together. And then from there goes the general contractor and the subcontractors, and also the chain of supply of materials. So we've been seeing this pandemic as affecting our business hard, especially small firms.
And how have you, the same question I was asking to Monica, how have you kept up with your employees individually in the sense of, like, what's your barometer for how they're doing psychologically, how they're feeling? I mean, you know, you're dealing with some big level issues in terms of the operation of the firm, but I mean, on a one-to-one basis as an employer, how have you kind of kept up with them and made sure that they're doing okay?
Well, we've been giving them the opportunity to work from home, especially the one that have kids and they feel a little concerned coming to the office. Of course, our working setting is already distancing from each other, but we are very flexible. I don't think we have any meetings with anybody, with any clients or product representatives in the firm. So at least they know that they are secure or safe when they come to work. Some of them, most of them, they can come to work to the office. The ones that they have kids are the ones that have the opportunity to work from home. And we are very flexible. As I said, communication is very, very important in our field. We work constantly collaborating between the principals and the designers and the spec writers and code research and so many things. So, but we've been very flexible and we understand it. And this is not only new for us, it's new for everybody. So we've been learning through the process how to deal with this.
Monica, I mean, FastSigns is really an El Paso anchor company. I mean, it's been around, I think, for almost 30 years. You've been sort of at the helm now for a couple of years. How quickly did you pivot? I mean, did you already have kind of this plan B in mind? And just as a fill-in, if folks didn't read the bio, FastSigns not only prep signage for COVID for clients or for new businesses, but also then to be able to produce some PPE. So did you all already have in mind kind of a blueprint to go that way, or did this come just kind of as an entrepreneurial thought in the business?
Actually, it just happened. We had no idea that we were going to be thrown into this. What I can say is, we're locally owned and operated. I own the one on Airway and George Streeter. There's an independent owner on Mesa, but we're part of a global network. And to be very honest, I think a lot of the pivoting came from all the other owners throughout the world, because there's over 700 FastSigns in the entire world. So ideas, graphics, files, designs, they came from everywhere. And all of us wanted to collaborate and help each other. Not every FastSigns has the same equipment. So sometimes that can be a difference between a location. But thankfully, we had 2 years ago, I purchased a 5-foot by 10-foot cutter. And without this cutter, we wouldn't have been able to do all of the PPE that we were able to do. So it makes a difference as far as resources. But to say that, I think what came out in my mind was, I have to find a way to keep my employees working. I have to, for my sanity also, I love to work. So I couldn't see myself just, stagnant and complacent and not being able to do something to help. So, it came from several different directions, but I'm very, very thankful for the network that I'm part of.
That's great. Let me pivot a little bit, Edgar, because I'd like to ask a question a little bit more design based, because I do think that this is interesting. I mean, we're talking a little bit about resilience today, talking about the way that businesses pivot. The question I have for you is a little bit more design based. I mean, so we've been on a trend for several years for open office spaces, right? We were looking for sort of open plane, that this should be better for collaboration, that there'd be this sense of engagement. It seems like, looking at businesses that are having to put up plexiglass shields that were never intended to be there, breaking the line of the plane in a way that hasn't happened. What is your sense from a design perspective? Do you think that this will be the next wave of what offices or buildings look like in terms of now having to anticipate something like a pandemic, or do you think that this is just a blip that we will overcome quickly?
Well,
personally, I think it's going to be something that's going to forever change the environment in offices, because we have done so many of these dividers for so many different types of entities, including medical facilities, educational facilities. Everybody needs them and everybody wants them, and every layout is so different. And I think as far as the architects, I mean, they're probably being overwhelmed and trying to figure out what's the best way to enclose or mitigate the open areas that everybody has always recently wanted for collaboration purposes. So it's we're making temporary ones, but as we've told a lot of our customers, we don't believe that this is temporary. This is probably going to be permanent.
Well, and it's funny you asked that question because as we speak, yesterday and this week we've been working on an office building with maybe 80% of the space is an open plan, bullpen area with system furniture. So yesterday we had to redesign the space to put not enclosed offices per se, but as at least some barriers. And what we start working is with the system furniture supplier and designer. How can we meet the new expectations? And basically the new expectations is, I think we're gonna continue with system furniture, open space where you have more collaboration, more interaction. But now the system furniture is gonna be higher, maybe with some acrylic panels or glass panels. But we don't know if this is a trend and how long it's gonna last. Hopefully, this go back to normal, but I doubt it. I think people is gonna be so afraid and so concerned that it might happen again next year or the next winter, that our approach is very flexible. We think we have to think ahead of the client to see what are gonna be their needs a year or 2 years or 5 years from now. So what we're trying to do is accommodate spaces that they can be moved or flex with folding partitions. And the main thing probably is it depends on the needs of the client. If the client needs open space, we start helping design and select the furniture that is gonna provide some visual connection, but physical barrier.
And do you think that the first Edgar and then back to Monica? Edgar, do you think that this is going to will this have an effect on material, like in terms of what you see being used in space? I mean, like you talked about glass and that as a function, or do you see that being less dependent on material, that it'll be more about design?
Yeah, I guess most of that is gonna be dictated by the client, and like I tell you, working on this space, we have to change already the materials of the floor. So the concern of our client was like, I don't want carpet anymore. Mm-hmm. Let's put a hard surface. So then we haven't seen this, but we're trying to find a floor that has bacteria resistant. It's only for hospitals. It's only for the medical field. But probably those products are going to be introduced now. And we see the change already in our industry with lighting, that it has UV effect, that at a certain time of the day, probably at night, where nobody's using it because the UV is affect the skin of the human. So those lights, and I was doing a virtual learn conference where they introduce us to those new lights that they're gonna come like now, where you propose this into the office during the working hours. It's a normal light, 3000 K or 4000 K temperature light, mimicking the sunlight, whatever. And at night, a certain time, they kick out this light that it remove bacteria. Mm-hmm. And the same thing already happened with the plastic laminate surfaces. They are more expensive. They already exist. But we think that's gonna be a requirement from many of the clients. So the surfaces, yes, it's gonna change the surfaces. Materials, and I guess the most important component here is gonna be lighting. And lighting now is a lot cheaper because now it's LED. The industry is changing so fast. But introducing this light that they remove bacteria and whole viruses, so I think that's gonna be very, very important in our industry.
Monica, I want to ask a question. You hit on this earlier, and I think this is an important question, especially for a group like this with business leaders. There is obviously a benefit to the community for the services that a group like FastSigns is capable of providing. But there's an interesting question, right? You still will have to be thinking about business development. You'll still need to be thinking about getting clients and adding to the base. Have you found that to be tricky? And in other words, you are doing something that is unique to the economy at the particular moment, which is beneficial for a business. But do you find that you have to kind of thread the needle so it doesn't seem too opportunistic, or is that less of a concern because you know that the service that you provide is going to be important for the local economy?
So, in general, our business, ever since I took over 9 years ago, we're a solutions based company to begin with for signage, for any type of information that you're trying to convey to an audience. So, our mindset has always been solutions. So, for us, pivoting really hasn't been very difficult for us because that's kind of how we're wired to begin with. And we get, minus COVID, we get so many customers that have the most ridiculous sometimes requests from us that I always tell the staff, we never tell a customer no until we have exhausted every resource that we possibly can, because there's always a way. There is always a way to figure something out. And if I can't do it, I will find somebody who can. And I would prefer to refer that customer out to somebody else and lose the sale, but gain the relationship as a business person, because I mean, we're solutions based, so we're trying to help. I wanted to touch on what Edgar had said about UV lights and all of that. I, as a business owner, have talked to somebody about getting a system here in our FastSigns locations that would work at night, and try to somewhat, I guess, kill a bacteria. So that's something that I talked to a local provider about 3 days ago, actually, when he came into the office to pick up some decals. But the other issue is the lack of materials. PETG is a material that we use to make face shields, and this was back in March. This was at the very beginning. I still can't get PETG material. They told me that I'd probably get it in August. And so we did with what we could. We sold out in, literally hours of everything. Acrylics, it's almost impossible to get acrylics. So, I mean, we're working as best we can with limited resources, but I don't give up. And I've been on phone calls for, sometimes 4 hours with suppliers all over the country trying to locate, materials. There's another material, but it's not 100% on killing the virus. But it's a bacterial resistant vinyl. And of course, it'll be more expensive. And I know Edgar had also mentioned something about surfaces potentially being able to resist the bacteria or the virus. So those are other things that are coming out into the market. Hopefully that'll be something that we can also pivot to. But, customers, as far as our customers, I mean, we have a lot of the same customers, a lot of new customers, but it's just nonstop, because people are really concerned about protecting their employees and the patrons that come into their facilities. So, it's just a matter of just trying to collaborate. I believe that's like the biggest thing, is try to get with people and businesses that can help you. It's not about competition right now. It's about helping others.
That makes sense.
Going back what you just, what Monica just said, we just see increase in cost of construction. We had to evaluate another, just 2 projects on the last week, do another cost estimate, because 30% of the building materials come from China, especially steel and glass. So right now, probably it's not noticeable, but we think China is slowing down their production, probably on everything, and mostly on those two. So we think it's gonna affect not only the national, not only the local, but the national construction industry. It's gonna increase again the cost. The only thing that we see decrease is the gas prices. But that's the only thing that we see. That the rest of the materials is gonna affect the construction a lot.
Do you think, Edgar, in terms of those material costs, and in terms of how much do you think that you will change your business model, if at all? I mean, as you and your partner kind of work through what this next year looks like in terms of making the pitch or trying to win a business, is it going to change much, or are you thinking more towards things that were already, like, your trajectory is already set, you've already been thinking about what you're going to do in this next year, it's just going to keep going? How much are you having to pivot?
Well, I think first we have to adapt, like many other industries in our city and our country. The main effect that we see is the economic engines, not only the private sector, but the government, the local government. They are the wheels that move a lot of the economic in our city. And they defer many of our projects, and they cancel some of our projects. And that affects us, not only, like I said, us, but it's a chain of people and business that affect everybody, and especially the local economy. We don't know yet how it's gonna affect us on the long term. On the short term, we're prepared because we received some of those business loans, but honestly, we don't know how it's gonna affect us. Hopefully, we don't let anybody go, and hopefully, these engines start reacting the economy again and keep everybody busy and spread the wealth. Honestly, we don't know. I think we're gonna, as we go, we're gonna see how we're gonna make changes working from home. Hopefully, some of our guys are gonna be working from home, and some are gonna be working in the office. But we don't know how it's gonna affect us on long term, and we don't know how long it's gonna take this to slow down or to go back to normal, if it goes back to normal.
Yeah. Monica, I have a question to pivot again, because I think this is one of the values of bringing folks like you in for this leadership class. You made a pretty big financial commitment to take over these FastSigns stores. How did you get into this as a business choice, and how have you seen your progress? I mean, have you is this something that you think you will be in this space for quite some time? Is this a good transition point for your participation in the economy? Like, how did you get into FastSigns, and how has this worked out as an enterprise for you?
So as a little girl, I knew that I always wanted to be a business owner, and I used to play store by myself. And my parents, when I was a little girl, they bought me one of those NCR like invoicing systems out of a little plastic box, and I used to just pretend that I owned a store. So when I went to college here at UTEP, I double majored in business, marketing management, and human resources. And so after I graduated, I went to work for a manufacturing company. I really loved working with, hands. I love to see things made, produced. So my husband told me he's a longtime business owner, very successful. He owns a PPP company for over 26 years. He said, if you don't buy this business, I'm going to buy it. And I took that to light, because if he's a really successful businessman and he felt that this was a very viable business, I should take advantage of it. So I did. and I honestly was going to get into DNA testing and forensics. I'm pretty much obsessed with all of that, and I went through the whole process to buy a DNA testing company here in El Paso, and for some reason it just at the very end didn't feel right, so I opted for FastSigns, and I love it. I'm a Hanks High School graduate. I was the yearbook editor there for 2 years.
Boo, boo. Understood. What's up, crew? Boo, boo.
But I loved design. I love being creative. I like colorful things. I like to look at vibrant colors, and I always feel that in design, you know, you can it's limitless. You can do anything. So I've really taken a liking to it, and I don't foresee, you know, ever probably leaving. I'm still kind of young, so I think I have, you know, another probably like 20 years that I could be doing this. So I really love what I do. I love the creativity. I love the alliances, and I love my customers, and I love trying to help them. So I think it's a perfect fit for me, and you know, I'll just continue to go with it, you know, and to improve, bring better equipment here, you know, in our facility for El Paso. The problem sometimes with El Paso is people don't want to pay for a lot of high tech, you know, output. And so that's kind of been an issue here. But I think El Paso, of course, has evolved, and they continue to want better and nicer things. So, you know, I don't think it's going to be such an issue like it was in the past here.
Now, Edgar, I have the benefit of knowing a little bit of the rationale for how you became an architect, but would you share with us a little bit of how you ended up in the field that you did?
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, like many architects, I grew up knowing that I love design, and I always was oriented to design, and I always pursue my career. Um, my background is I was born in El Paso, but I grew up in Mexico, master's degrees in Mexico City, and moved back to El Paso when I was 25. Trying to learn English. That's why you hear my accent probably. But one thing led you to another. I guess design is my life. I design and I practice design in so many other fields, not only architectural, but theater design and furniture design and jewelry and ceramics and all kind. But that makes you probably a little bit more susceptible to do an holistic design because you practice in so many fields. So design is very psychological. You always have to think ahead what the client needs, even they don't know what they need sometimes. So I love what I do, like many of you. I don't see myself doing anything else besides designing in other fields, probably when I retire. But what I love is the impact that me and my firm makes in the user, in the city, and trying to make our city a better quality, better city, more livable, and always learning. That's what I say. I say to my students of Texas Tech. You need to leave your town, go and learn somewhere, and learn and be the best. But at one moment, you have to come back to your town and make your community better. Learn practice what you learn and what you don't like from other cities or other communities or other cultures, and come back. And also travel. Travel makes your mind to open to other possibilities and to other ideas and to other ways to see life, and especially design for me. So that's what I'm so happy in El Paso, because I'm trying to make my city better, and not only for me but for the people who use it.
Excellent. Just a quick reminder, I've got obviously a whole series of questions and can go for quite a bit with Monica and Edgar, but a reminder, if you have questions, you can either put them into the chat and I can ask you directly and then you can chime in, or if you've got a question that you want to ask, we can definitely just have you fold into the conversation. But a reminder that we do want you to take advantage of having both of these folks. Let me keep on this trend, Monica, to ask you a leadership question, because clearly you're very entrepreneurial. Your decision to invest into FastSigns is indicative of this. But as you've been in this career trajectory, what's been the most significant lesson that you've learned? And so that could be a technical kind of thing that you've learned. But I mean, now that you've sort of had a chance to participate in the economy, have people that you are responsible for in terms of payroll, have a product that is out in the market. What's been the most significant lesson that you have learned as a business owner or as a leader in the local economy?
I think team is everything. My employees are my most important asset. I love the collaboration with other FastSigns owners. Every single year we have our annual convention, which is amazing, where we get to learn and see new equipment suppliers, get ideas from other people who are doing things. I think the nice thing is knowing that I'm not alone if there's an issue, because sometimes you feel as a business owner that certain things happen to you and nobody else goes through the same issues. So I have a really big sense of community, and I always try to help the community. I'm super big on El Paso. I've lived here since I was 6 months old. I was born in San Jose, California, while my dad was getting his master's in nuclear engineering in Berkeley. So I can't say that I was born here, but I've lived here my entire life, from 6 months to today. And I had opportunities to go to UT Austin and TCU. I had scholarships over there, but my family is really everything to me, and I couldn't see being away. So I stayed here and loved going to UTEP. So as far as the love of what I do, the love of my community, the love of the network, the FastSigns network, and all of our customers, I think that has been some of the biggest lessons for me. The other day, one of my outside sales reps, I call him my superstar. He's awesome. And one of our big customers said, we just absolutely love him, and we could never go with anybody else because he just takes such good care of us. And we know that it comes from the top. And we know that, you've instilled that in the employees, and it shows. So, I just feel so grateful for, all of our loyal customers that we've had for over 29 years. And so I want to just continue that and improve. There's always room for improvement. When I was in manufacturing in a facility here in El Paso for 10 years, we, promoted a lot of the QS, TS quality systems, the Toyota production system. So I was exposed to all of that, and I feel that that's very important to have high quality. Majority of all our vinyls, everything, our inks are all U.S. made. We don't use Chinese made materials like that, and that's why I think the quality of our work withstands the elements here in El Paso. You have to take into consideration that between the excessive heat, the massive UV rays, the sand, the winds, a lot of our manufacture, the vinyls that we get, our region, if it's guaranteed for let's say 5 years, if you look at our region in El Paso, they only guarantee it for sometimes a year to 2 years because we have a really harsh environment here. So a lot of times we have to educate our customers so that we can explain to them the differences between vinyls and materials. Do you want to pay a little bit more for it to last longer, or do you want to buy something that's not going to last in our environment? So it's just our industry is always changing. There's always new products, digital types of signage that a lot of people are opting for. a lot of touchless, types of solutions because of everything that's going on. So we just continue to learn. That's all we can do, and educate our customers.
Edgar, variation of the same question for you. The footprint that you all have now in El Paso is pretty profound. But to get to that point, from being a brand new architect in the market to build up the company that you have, what is the biggest lesson you've learned? Whether that's about business, or it's about the way that you make design accessible to people. I mean, what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned in this career trajectory?
Well, I guess what I always said, what I like to market myself is that I listen. I listen to the client. We are not star architects that we think that we know everything. You learn on the process. Every project is different, and that's why they call it practicing architecture, because you never master architecture. You're practicing on every project, and every project is like a child. Some of them, they are beautiful, and some they are ugly, and you want to hide them. But you learn on the process, and you learn to listen. I always tell my guys, my architects, that don't marry to an idea. The project evolved, the floor plan evolved, the facade evolved, and evolved with so many components. The main one is the economic, the budget. Sometimes, of course, it's the orientation, the needs of the client, the needs of the future. How flexible you're gonna make that building for different arrangement of the future. So I guess for me is listen. You cannot succeed on this industry if you don't morph to be very flexible and practice all the styles. I love to design on very modern, but I try to excel the mid-century and the territorial style. The territorial architectural style is the only style from our local. Only Juarez, El Paso, and Las Cruces has that style. And we as an architect, I think we have the responsibility to learn it and to reproduce it. And I have the opportunity to design some of my buildings, especially in downtown and Segundo Barrio, on that style. Not imitating, but taking some of the elements to transcend. I don't know. We don't know everything. Every project is different. Sometimes we don't know the project that is coming, but that's what we are trained for, to resolve problems, to resolve issues, and learn from every project. I mean, we'll never be an expert, but you become expert when you know a little bit more than the other ones. And I don't know. That's my intake. I think listening is what I learn in my practice.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Monica, another quick pivot, but one that I think is important. The Chamber sponsors a big annual Women in Business conference, and one of the conversations that always comes out of that is a conversation about resilience. And you have been successful not only in the manufacturing industry, which tends to be fairly male dominated, but you've also been successful as a business owner. Do you draw a distinction for yourself when you think about your role as a business person, period, or a female business person? I mean, and is there a difference to you in your mind in terms of how you approach your position? And do you think about that when it comes to mentoring women that come up either through your business or the women that you may encounter in different kinds of organizations in the community?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think I have always identified a lot with, I guess, male-oriented businesses. I get on cranes. and I drill into buildings. I don't let anything stop me. I've never felt that, my being gender was something that had limitations. I would honestly say my parents always told me you can do anything. So I always believed that. And I always, fed off of that. So when I was in manufacturing, I did human resources, purchasing, office administration. I took care of the entire facility and I loved it. And the plant manager used to sometimes refer to me as the pit bull because he said, she can hold her own, especially with males because, they listen to her. So in this field that I'm in now, this market, it is mainly male dominated. And when I show up to a customer sometimes with my work belt on and my hard hat and my safety shoes, I mean, they're just like, we don't really see this that often. There was one project that I did where I was on a metal building with my staff putting up a sign, and the owner there said to the sales rep when we got back, "Who is that girl? Because we were thinking of hiring her. She's pretty industrious and seems fearless." And he said, "Well, that's the owner." And so it's been a joke for almost 5 years on how I almost got recruited away from my own business. But I mean, I'll take it. I mean, to me, it makes me happy. It fulfills me, and I guess it kind of makes me realize that I'm doing the right thing, that I really want to continue with this. But I do have that happen where I think some males don't think that maybe I'm capable of doing what I do, but I've been able to prove it. And like I said, I have an amazing team that I learn from every single day. Every project, just like Edgar said, is different. Every order is different. You can't say that there's a formula for doing it. You just have to listen and, get the information and give a solution. But as a female, yeah, I have seen, certain individuals feel like, maybe I'm in the wrong field, but I don't ever want for anybody to make me feel like that, and I won't accept that. That's something that I will not allow. And my staff always told me, they're like, you're capable of anything. Sometimes you work even harder than us because you just don't give up. And that's one thing that has mentally been able to get me through this whole pandemic is I tell everybody I'm not going to give up. I just refuse to give up. I will continue for as long as I can, and that's kind of the mentality that's gotten me through this past 4 months.
Edgar, I have a question for you, a little bit different, but in the same vein. And the heart of the question is how diversity is important to architecture. And the reason I bring this up is because we're always talking about shifts and paradigms in the way people think, and schools of thought when it comes to design, and some of that is definitely influenced by people's cultural backgrounds and diversity. And I always have to I haven't told you this, but there's a house that I drive by on the west side, probably built in the 60s, and it doesn't fit any of the neighborhood. It's got the weirdest Asian facade that's been added. So somebody decided that they could make their house look like a pagoda, and it looks horrible. Every time I see that particular house, I hope nobody on the leadership group owns that house. I think of Edgar because I think, man, I bet Edgar would have something to say about this. But Edgar, in terms of diversity and in terms of culture, how do you see that changing, or is that an important part of architecture? I mean, do you think people coming from diverse backgrounds, both culturally, from an identity perspective, how does that play out in the architecture world, and in eventually what we will see in buildings and in spaces and those sorts of things?
Well, let me tell you, on my old firm where I was working, everybody who was working on the firm, it was coming from Texas Tech. And then I become and disrupt that trend that my old bosses used to have. Like, you are not hired if you don't come from Texas Tech. and I was the first one who was coming from Texas Tech for a foreign university, and at the beginning it was very hard, especially because of my communication skills. It was very hard to communicate, especially technically, those technical terms on the architectural and the construction. But I think after a few years that you demonstrate what you can do, because your language is designed more than verbally, and I think that opened the doors, at least on my old firm, to hire architects from different backgrounds, and some of them they were hired from Mexico. Now in my firms, we don't discriminate where you come from. I think it's better because they give you better diversity and give us a better background to have many ideas, like I said, when you study, when you work, when you live out of this city, and then you come and merge all your knowledge, all your experience, I think that can make that better. We love to hire women architects. I think it's a minority, but we see they have, of course, an amazing background and an amazing communication skills that sometimes men we don't have. And about diversity of design, we have an amazing example of design in our city, and that is, if we study Henry Truss, all the styles that he excelled, and there are so many. Just go to Sunset Heights and see how many houses on different styles he had. It's incredible. Even universities from out of this country, they've been studying his styles, his aesthetics, and not only in residential, but on commercial or high rises. The other one that probably you know better is Franklin Wright. He got so many faces that he excelled. He come with this a circle face, some very geometric face, another one on the waterfall house, falling water house. It's incredible what we can study with these masters, especially locally and nationally. But go back to your questions. Yeah, we want to diversify the people who come to work for us, and it's not only for them, but for us, because enrich our perception, how they see. And every university on the state, they have a different ideology. Some they are very design oriented, certain aesthetics, and other ones are more theoretical. So I think in our firm, we love to have all kind of backgrounds of architects.
Fantastic. Well, this has really been exciting to hear both your perspectives. I think, Monica, Edgar, the work that you're doing in your respective fields is not only important, but it is also significant for El Paso. And I think that you both make this a much better place by being here and by bringing your leadership to bear. And so I very much appreciate you taking the time this morning to be in the conversation, and wish you the best of luck and hope that everything keeps moving forward.